The rebel camp on the outskirts of Ajwain's lower city buzzed with frantic activity. In a makeshift infirmary, healers moved between rows of cots, their faces etched with exhaustion and despair. Amira, the head healer, wiped sweat from her brow as she examined yet another patient. The man's skin burned with fever, his breath coming in ragged gasps. She mixed a tincture of herbs, knowing it would do little to combat the plague's relentless advance. "How many more today?" a voice asked behind her. Amira turned to see Yayati, the rebel leader, his eyes heavy with concern. "7 since dawn," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "And it's not even midday yet." Yayati's jaw clenched. "And our supplies?" Amira shook her head. "Running dangerously low. The treatments we have, they're not enough, Yayati. We're losing this battle." A young healer approached, hands shaking as he held out a list. "These are the herbs we need, but they're rare in the lower city. Without them..." Yayati took the list, his eyes scanning the unfamiliar names. "There must be something we can do," he muttered. Amira hesitated, then spoke. "There is one possibility. The chief apothecary of the upper city, Manu. His knowledge of herbs and treatments far surpasses our own. If we could somehow get his help..." Yayati's eyes narrowed. "You're suggesting we kidnap the chief apothecary?" "I'm suggesting we do whatever it takes to save our people," Amira replied, her voice firm. Yayati nodded slowly, a plan forming in his mind. "Very well, I'll handle this personally." As dusk fell over Ajwain, Manu pulled his cloak tighter around him, slipping through the shadows of the lower city. The stench of disease and despair hung heavy in the air. He clutched a small satchel of herbs and remedies, determined to gather more information about the plague's spread. Approaching a makeshift clinic, Manu's heart sank. The moans of the sick and dying echoed from within. He steeled himself and pushed open the door. Inside, chaos reigned. Overwhelmed healers moved frantically between patients, their faces etched with exhaustion and despair. Manu spotted a young woman struggling to mix a tincture, her hands shaking. "Here, let me help," he offered, reaching for the herbs. The woman's eyes widened in recognition. You're the chief apothecary." Before Manu could respond, a commotion erupted outside. The door burst open, and a group of rebels stormed in, led by a fierce-eyed woman Manu instantly recognized, Rohini. "Well, well," she sneered. "What do we have here? A lost apothecary, perhaps?" Manu raised his hands in surrender. "I came to study the plague's spread. Your people are dying, and it will reach the upper city soon if we don't contain it." Rohini's eyes narrowed. "Or perhaps you're here to spy for the governor?" Before Manu could protest, a cloth pressed against his face, and darkness engulfed him. Manu awoke in a dimly lit chamber, his hands bound. Rohini stood before him, her eyes cold. A tall, imposing man stood beside her, Yayati, the rebel leader. "Why are you really here, Manu?" Rohini demanded. Manu's voice was hoarse as he repeated, "I came to study the plague. We need to understand its spread to contain it." Yayati studied Manu intently. "And what do you propose we do with our guest, Rohini?" Rohini's voice was sharp. "We can't trust him. He's loyal to the upper city." Manu's brow furrowed, his voice tinged with uncertainty. It's not that simple. My position, my responsibilities..." He trailed off, clearly conflicted. After a moment, he continued, his tone firmer, but still laced with doubt. "I can't be seen aiding rebels. The consequences would be severe, not just for me, but for everyone I care about in the upper city." Yayati turned to Rohini, speaking quietly. "I need a moment alone with him." Trust me on this." Rohini's eyes flashed with anger and distrust, but she respected Yayati's leadership. "Fine," she said tersely, "but be careful. We can't afford to be betrayed." She exited the room, leaving Yayati alone with Manu. Yayati leaned in, his voice low and persuasive. "Manu, listen to me. This plague doesn't care about city walls or social status. If we don't stop it here, it will ravage all of Ajwain, your people included." Manu's resolve wavered. Yayati pressed on. "We both want the same thing, to save lives. This isn't about rebellion or politics, it's about survival. Help us, and you help everyone in Ajwain." Manu closed his eyes, weighing his options. Finally, he spoke, his voice heavy with reluctance. I understand the gravity of the situation, but you must understand my position. If I'm discovered helping rebels, it could mean execution for treason." Yayati nodded solemnly. "I know we're asking a lot, but think of the lives you could save. We'll do everything in our power to keep your involvement secret." After a long moment, Manu spoke again. "I'll need proper facilities and access to my notes from the upper city. Without them, I can't guarantee any success." Yayati's face showed relief, but his voice remained serious. "We'll do what we can, but understand this, you'll work under strict supervision. One wrong move, and our agreement ends." As Yayati cut Manu's bonds, he added, "And Manu, Rohini doesn't trust easily. Be patient." Manu nodded solemnly, understanding the precarious nature of his position. Yayati continued, his voice low and stern. "And know this, if any harm comes to Rohini or our people because of you, there won't be a place in Ajwain where you can hide from me. Are we clear?" "Crystal clear," Manu replied. As he met Yayati's intense gaze, Manu caught a glimpse of something more than just a leader's concern for his people. There was a fierce protectiveness in Yayati's eyes when he spoke of Rohini, a depth of emotion that hinted at feelings beyond mere loyalty or friendship. His face hardened from the realization. In the rebel infirmary, Manu was shocked by the severity of the situation. Patients lay on makeshift cots, many too weak to even cry out in pain. The rebel healers, though dedicated, were clearly overwhelmed. As Manu began to work, mixing tinctures and examining patients, he could feel Rohini's eyes on him, watching his every move. The other rebels kept their distance, their expressions a mix of hope and suspicion. By nightfall, Manu had treated dozens of patients, his mind racing with new information about the plague's progression. As he washed his hands, Yayati approached. "You've done good work today," Yayati said quietly. "But remember, your presence here must remain a secret, for your safety and ours." Manu nodded, the weight of his decision heavy on his shoulders. He had a week, at most, before his absence would be noticed in the upper city, a week to make a difference, to gain the rebels' trust, and perhaps to find a way to bridge the divide that threatened to tear Ajwain apart. As he settled into his guarded quarters for the night, Manu's thoughts turned to Priya and the life he'd left behind. What would she think of his actions? Would she understand the choice he'd made? Meanwhile, in the upper city, Priya paced anxiously in their home. "Where are you, Manu?" she whispered, fear gripping her heart. In the council chambers, Governor Vikram's voice boomed. "Manu's disappearance is suspicious. We must consider the possibility of betrayal." Councillor Bharat nodded grimly. "We must assume the worst. If Manu has turned against us, the consequences could be dire." Priya's heart sank. "No, he wouldn't. He must be in trouble. We have to find him." Governor Vikram's eyes narrowed. "We'll increase patrols and tighten security. If Manu has betrayed us, he'll regret it. If he's been taken, We'll find him